Revolutionary greetings, comrades. It's a red Sunday, the 27th of July, 2025. We are getting to the end of my birthday month. We are discussing the Liberation Movement Summit, which is being hosted by the African National Congress in South Africa in Kempton Park. It brings a number of former liberation movements from the SADC region. They are meeting under the theme Defending the Liberation Gains, Advancing Integrated Socio-Economic Development, Strengthening Solidarity for a Better Africa. We must point out that the liberation movements are out of touch because if they really understand why we went to war and the understanding what has been obtaining since majority rule, they will not come up with this thing. Defending the liberation gains. What are these liberation gains that they are defending? Because to them, the liberation gains is that the party of liberation must always be in power. That's what it means to them. If the party of liberation is no longer in power, to them, it means there's been a reversal of the gains of the liberation. It is not about the people. It is about the party or the movement. Because if the former liberation movement understand where we are coming from and they understand the current conditions since majority rule, and I'm using majority rule in the context that though elections are rigged, there is dispute on the outcome of an election, at least we do manage to go and cast our votes. Every time we talk about election, people say the most important person is not the one who votes, but the one who counts votes. We'll discuss this some other time. But if the liberation movements understand our current conditions, they will know that our liberation is not complete. So if our liberation is not complete, what gains are the liberation movement defending? Because if you are saying defending the liberation gains, what are these gains that they are defending? 45 years after majority rule in Zimbabwe, 50 years in Mozambique, Angola, 31 years in South Africa, and so forth, Namibia, and so forth. But we are still under a neo-colonial state. So what are these gains that they want to defend? Would understand if the theme was completing the liberation, completing our liberation. Completing our liberation means that first and foremost, we must reject neoliberal policies. Because you cannot claim to be defending the liberation gains when you are pursuing neoliberal economic policies in different countries or in the SADC region. It cannot be correct. So what are you defending? What are the liberation gains that you are defending? When neoliberalism has taken center stage post-majority rule. This is why the former liberation movements have lost touch with the people. As former president of Mozambique, Comrade Jacome Chissano rightly pointed out, that the liberation movements have lost touch with the people. Why have they lost touch with the people? They are doing exactly what Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels said in the Communist Manifesto, that the executive is but managers of the economy on behalf of those who own the means of production. Now, if indeed the liberation movements understood or even understand why we fought for liberation, they would have transformed our economies. But that's not the case. And the problem with most of the liberation movements is that they were led by those that were trained by the West in missionary schools. If you study the history of our liberation, those that studied in missionary schools, they were the leaders of the liberation movement. After liberation, they had to build strong links with the West. During the struggle for liberation movements were trained, supported by communists, international communists. It is the Soviet Union and the rest of the socialist blocs that made it possible for liberation armies to be trained to wage a war against white minority rule, against the apartheid. The West did not train anyone to fight against colonialism. But post-liberation, liberation movements have implemented economic policies that are designed by the IMF and the World Bank. If you are a Zimbabwean, you will know what economic structural adjustment program did to our economy. If you are a South African, you will know what GEAR did. And you study our region, all of them went through structural adjustment programs. These are Western economic concepts. So there are 6 liberation movements, former liberation movements, participating in this summit. And of course, Zimbabwe has been represented by the reactionary ZANU-PF. We've explained why ZANU-PF is a reactionary former liberation movement. And this summit happens at a time when migration to South Africa from the rest of the SADC region is on the rise. It is only Angola and Namibia that is not having its citizens in the main flocking en masse to South Africa, Botswana, and other countries, possible Zambia as well. But the rest of us, particularly Zimbabweans, were all over. So what are these gains that the liberation movements seek to defend? ZANU-PF is in power through the help of the military. If the military was not on the side of ZANU-PF, ZANU-PF will not be in power in Zimbabwe. The ANC has just dropped to about 40% of the vote in the last election. Frelimo struggled to cross the line in the last elections. We saw the demonstrations in Mozambique. SWAPO was also struggling to get to the line. Comrade Blaine Nzimande, the national chairperson of the South African Communist Party, captured it well when he said ZANU-PF, it's now a rural party. So the liberation movements have lost the support from working class communities. It's because of the neoliberal policies that they advance, corruption, nepotism. Some commentators are saying that unless something happens in South Africa, a coalition government will continue beyond the next elections. And there's a possibility that the ANC might not be in that coalition government. So liberation movements have lost the touch with the people. So when you say you are defending the gains of the liberation, what are these gains? Because the liberation was about land to the people. Liberation was about the productive forces should have been in the hands of the people. Liberation meant that people would have access to basic services. Power, that is electricity, clean drinking water, reliable transport, quality education, access to health facilities, shelter, at least 3 meals a day. All this is not happening in most communities. And you meet in Kempton Park, and you say you are defending the gains of the liberation. Would understand, as I've already said, that if the liberation movements were meeting in discussing on how to dismantle neo-colonial states, but it becomes difficult for them to even begin to have this discussion. Because they still, some of them, they still hide money in the Western capitals when they are sick, except for South Africa, of course. But many of these liberation movements leaders, when they are sick, they go to foreign lands for treatment, medical treatment. We just had President Lungu, who died in South Africa, up to now is not buried. Of course, is not from the party that he led. It was formed after liberation. We have seen Mugabe died in Singapore after destroying the health infrastructure in Zimbabwe. General Chiwenga was treated in China when he was ill. And many of them, they go outside the country for medical treatment. So what are the gains that the liberation movement are saying they want to defend? Because the people are struggling to have the basic services which I've spoken to. Unemployment is high. The economy is not in our hands. The manufacturing sector in the SADC region is just about collapsing. We are having finished products in the form of clothing coming from Asia elsewhere, which is being sold in the streets of most of the SADC region countries. In Zimbabwe, our streets are flooded with Japanese vehicles. We don't manufacture our own vehicles in Zimbabwe. In the SADC region, our leaders are competing to be chauffeur-driven in German-made vehicles. No country has its own motor vehicle. You go to UK, the king uses a motor vehicle manufactured in England. Same with the Americans, same with the Germans, same with the Italians, same with the French. It's only us who are still under neocolonialism. We don't control the mines in most of the cases. We don't control the financial institutions, most of the cases, but want to defend the gains of the liberation. You might have your views on the ongoing summit. You might want to share with us what your own liberation movement has done for you in your country. When you look into, as I'm concluding, when you look into the list of the liberation movements, this summit, there are no communist parties that are attending. If you see a communist there, they will be attending not on behalf of a communist party, but might be invited. In the case of South Africa, comrades from the SACP might be invited, not as SACP, they might be delegates representing the ANC, not the Communist Party. But it is communist parties that armed, trained, armed, financed the liberation armies. Post-liberation, the liberation movements went to the West. In Zimbabwe, it was until 1981 or so that Russia had to have its own embassy. Reason being that the Soviet Union did not support ZANU-PF during the struggle, because ZANU-PF was established as a reactionary movement. I've said, we've spoken about this. Some people get fooled most of the time that ZANU-PF fought alongside with other authentic liberation movements. When we talk of authentic liberation movements in the SADC region, which of course they've lost out, or they are now detached from the people because of neoliberal policies. Others are out of power. That is, UNIP is out of power. ZAPU did not even gain political power in 1980. So in Zambia, it was UNIP. In Zimbabwe, it was ZAPU. In Mozambique, it was Frelimo. In South Africa, the ANC. In Angola, PLA. In Namibia, SWAPO. In Mozambique, Frelimo. These were authentic liberation movements as we knew them. But because of the Unity Accord in Zimbabwe, 22nd of December 1987, which brought ZAPU and the ZANU together. In fact, when ZAPU was swallowed by ZANU-PF, 1987, this is why today ZANU-PF is said to be a former liberation movement. It is now viewed as progressive. There's nothing progressive about ZANU-PF. There's nothing revolutionary about ZANU-PF. Nothing at all. UNIP lost the power in 1991. It disappeared. So please write in the comment section. Otherwise, comrades, as I said, it's a Red Sunday. Amandla, comrades, Red Salute.